Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Hill Country Homegirls. I'm Kourtni,
And I'm Steph.
and today we're going to talk about the dirt on buying dirt. We have some good things to cover today.
That's right. We're going to be talking about what to look for before you purchase a home or land in the area.
Yeah.
Especially land.
Yes. And you might notice our backdrop is a little bit different today. We're in another one of our new builds built by LTX Homes. So we really liked this backdrop a little bit more. So you're going to see a few episodes here, and then who knows where we're going to be next.
We're upgraded and we have the natural limestone accents of the hill country behind us. So it just feels appropriate.
It does. It works. So let's start with buying raw land. I feel like a lot of people are doing that these days, just getting some dirt to have their name on it. So, and there's a lot of things that go into that if you haven't purchased, just raw land before. I have a lot of people that come from Austin or California, and they're not hill country people out here, rednecks, hillbillies, if you must.
That's right.
So a lot of people don't know. There's a lot of things that can go into it. Unrestricted. If, the listing might say it's unrestricted, but not all the time it fully unrestricted, do whatever you want. Normally you have to go by your county guidelines. They vary county by county. Some counties, they might say if you're outside of the city limits, we don't need you to have any permits. Other counties say, no, we need permits for any time you build anything. So make sure you have a very well-educated agent when you are purchasing raw land.
Yeah, that's for sure. We have seen things go wrong many times. We'll get a call from somebody out of state. For instance, I live on the north shore of Lake Travis, and right now we have really low lake levels. And we'll sometimes have a person call that believes that they currently have lakefront property. Sometimes they bought it out of state without actually ever laying eyes on the property. Other times they just haven't been to the property in many years, and it turns out that their property is no longer lakefront. Sometimes they don't even know that's possible. And some of the lake levels do fluctuate, so that can significantly impact the value of your property as well as just the ways you can use the property. If you're buying lakefront, you usually want to have water.
Right? Yeah, I've got two listings right now out on Lake Buchanan, and I've been very hesitant to market them as waterfront because they are when the lake is full, but they are at the mouth of where Lake Buchanan gets filled by the Colorado River, and it's bare up there. It's very dry. We've got a lot of rain though the last couple of weeks, so
yes, we have.
I'm really excited as of last weekend, I think Lake Buchanan had come up like 2 feet, but we still need like another 20 feet for it to get full. Yeah. I think the one of the meteorologists here locally said it would need to rain every day for 3 weeks for it to fill up, which is kind of crazy.
Well, honestly, we haven't been missing many days.
We haven't been missing many days, so who knows?
I'm just hoping we get like halfway up to where we were a few years ago before this drought started. Because right now we are very low. If you look at the historical lake levels on LCRA, which is the Lower Colorado River Authority, they have all of the data there. We are actually in one of the lowest points since they started tracking it.
Yes.
So
yeah, I've been going out to Lake Buchanan pretty much my whole life, and I've seen it all the way full, and I've seen it very, very dry. I always refer to it, it's either boat season or it's buggy season. Are we going to be driving our boat out to fish, or are we going to be driving a buggy down far down to the water line so we can fish? So, but I'm glad you mentioned LCRA, because a lot of people don't know that whenever you're purchasing something on waterfront, or it might not even have to be waterfront, LCRA has a jurisdiction within 3,000 feet of what they call the 1020 line, which is for Lake Buchanan is 1020. That's when the lake is full, when it's at 1,020 feet. If you're within 3,000 feet of that 1020 line, then you're under LCRA jurisdiction when it comes to getting a septic put in or buying a piece of property that has an existing septic, you have to get it inspected by LCRA, and then they'll issue what they call a continued use permit, which means they've come out, they've checked it, it's not, leaking, sewer into the ground, which would then end up in our lakes. So that is a big one. I have sold quite a few properties and worked quite a few deals where it's older houses or older property that's been in the family for a long time, well before LCRA had stepped in, and there's septics that are there that have never been permitted. And that's a big no-no with the LCRA.
And usually, if they have never been permitted, they are probably way out.
Oh, yeah.
I've never seen one pass that's like that.
Yeah.
It's usually going to have to need replacement. Unless, sometimes people just don't know. I've never encountered this, but maybe someone might put in a really fancy one without a permit. I just don't think, like around here, you'd have to be dealing with some real shady characters because the people that put them in know all about the LCRA.
Exactly. Yeah.
domain
Nobody,
as well.
nobody around here is going to put in a septic without LCRA's approval first. And if they do, then you need to be questioning who you're hiring.
Exactly.
Because I have seen people that have, and I've heard horror stories where people, they own septic companies, elsewhere, and then they're like, oh yeah, we'll buy some waterfront property, and they just go to throw a septic tank in there, and LCRA gets wind of it, which they always do. They're like the all-seeing eye; they know everything, and they've got to pull that brand new septic tank out and then start the process all over because they have to approve the whole. If you have a well on the property, you can't be within 100 feet of the well. You can't have a septic tank within 100 feet of the well. But yeah, LCRA, that covers Lake Buchanan, Inks Lake, LBJ, Lake Marble Falls, and Lake Travis too. So anywhere along the Highland Lakes, if you're buying property and that needs a septic or that has an existing septic, call LCRA, get the permits, get the continued use permits if there's an existing one. Make sure you go through them.
Absolutely.
It's a big deal. You got to get that done or it's going to cost you thousands of dollars. So
there are so many random things that are coming to mind of just buying hill country property that you may never expect if you haven't lived here. So let's talk about one of them that's popping in my head, the roads.
Oh, yeah.
You might just think, I don't know how it works in every other state, but you might think every road is public use. It's like, this is a road. Surely I can use it if there's no gate blocking this road.
Right.
And surely somebody is going to be taking care of this road. Like usually you're expecting it to be the city or the county or whoever it does. Well, that is one thing. If you buy kind of out in the boonies out here, further down, let's say you encounter a gravel road. Mm-hmm. You better start asking questions about that road.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. There's a neighborhood actually here in Bertram. It was part of an HOA years ago. The HOA dissolved, but the county it's still technically a subdivision, and so the county does not maintain those roads. They're not privately maintained roads, but they're also not maintained by the county. So the way that I know the neighbors out there do it is every, couple years, somebody will bring in dirt. I know some people have, motor graders and things like that, and they'll fix the potholes when they can, where they can. But I mean, it's a rough road. It's a rough going down any of those roads out there, but there's quite a few like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like many. And the crazy part is that some of them are newer subdivisions, and everybody who bought, and in some cases, I don't even know if the people who set up the HOAs understood that those roads were not going to be maintained, and
right.
that should have been built into the HOA. So there's been situations where HOAs have had to amend, the dues as well as the bylaws to cover that. And
yeah.
And actually take votes on if these roads should be maintained. Now, in areas that do not have an HOA, so they're unrestricted usually, and they have either dirt roads or gravel roads, or old asphalt that's like 40 years old,
right.
It's barely doing anything. It's like only in chunks. Well, that usually goes to like all the neighbors come together and put some money in the pot.
Yep.
I'm serious. That is like
Yep.
the way it's done. So it's important to ask those questions if you're looking at land, about all the roads that you need to access your property. So every turn you have to make, if there is a road that you can tell that this is different, this does not
Yeah.
feel like the city
Ask
road
the
anymore.
questions.
Exactly.
Which brings me to another point, easements.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of properties in Texas that you have to have an easement to get to your property. Texas has a law against landlocking people. So if Steph was to buy a piece of property behind mine and she has to go through my property to get to hers, it would be against the law for me to say you cannot come through my property to get to yours. They have to have a deeded easement to get. She would have to have a deeded easement to get to her property. So don't stress on that because it is a law. If you do buy something that is just really tucked back in there, it is a law in Texas. You do have to have a deeded easement to get back there. You cannot be landlocked. So that's a plus.
But I will say, on the flip side, I was selling in Dripping Springs a few years ago, a multi-million-dollar property on tons of acreage. And it was the property that was providing the easement. And the easement was either very old or outdated. I can't remember all the details of it, but it needed to be renewed. It got discovered that there was this easement, and the buyer was no longer interested in the property because they didn't want to buy a property that had to have an easement on it.
I've had buyers like that too.
Yeah.
They don't want to deal with the easement, but like I said, you can't be landlocked in Texas. You have to have access to your property. So it's going to be there. Some people just don't want to have to drive through somebody else's stuff to get to theirs, which is totally understandable. But always ask the questions on if there's any easements, especially if you're buying land that's, tucked way back in somewhere. And usually when there is an easement, it kind of turns your lot into what we call flagpole lots. So you'll have a long skinny piece and then it'll open up to the rest of the land. But you have that flagpole part to get back to yours. So.
It literally looks like a flagpole on the plat.
Yeah.
So it's important just to check that on both ends to see if your property is providing an easement or if you need an easement to get to it.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing that I like to tell my buyers is if we're buying raw land like within a subdivision, like more like ranchette subdivisions, 2 acre plus, check the utilities. If it doesn't already have usually in the MLS, it'll say, or like on Zillow, it'll say well and septic needed. Some subdivisions aren't like that. They have public water. I know there is a neighborhood here in Bertram where you have to hook up to the public water, and there is a tap fee for that, like there would be if you got land in the city. But their tap fee is like $24,000. So it's almost like drilling a well, but you have to get approval from them before you can drill your own well. They'd rather you just tap into their water.
Right.
So $24,000 to tap into the water. You have to have a septic, which that's kind of standard around here. Yeah. Unless you're in town, most people do have septics. And then your electricity. But the kicker is it's all underground utilities. So when you're looking at lots in this particular neighborhood, what I always do for my clients is make sure that there's an electricity junction box on their side of the street, or where we don't have to, because if there's a junction box that's way over here and we've got to come across the street to get electricity on their side of the road, my buyer is responsible for connecting to that junction box, boring under the road, or trenching across the road, fixing the road from trenching across the road, and then setting their meters up on their property. So I know in that neighborhood, it's like $50,000, $60,000 just to get water, electricity, septic, which a lot of people are not prepared to pay all that. They don't expect the fees to be that much. So another reason why you need to really have an educated agent in your area, because some agents don't realize that. They're just like, oh yeah, you can hook up to it, but there's a lot more fees going in when you got to bore under the road, repair the hot mix, all that. It's just a whole thing.
I'm just gonna say it. If you have a city agent from Austin and you're trying to buy acreage out here, raw land, best of luck. Like, honestly, just best of luck to you, unless they happen to be very, very educated on all the entities, all the things that can go wrong, like these things we're talking about. Just one of these things being missed or going wrong, like the road, the easement, the well, the septic, the lake, levels, and just having knowledge of how those can rise and fall, as well as just various other aspects of your lot. It is very, very difficult to know these things without having experience in it,
Right.
because they are so random, you would never guess.
Exactly.
So I'll just say, use a hill country agent if you're trying to buy hill country land. And
I
then
agree 1000%.
another thing that I was thinking about when you were going through all this with the builders is, if you buy with LTX Home Builders, just to give ourselves a little shout out here, all of these headaches, we deal with them every day. We know how to deal with them.
Yes.
And when we purchase our lots, we know all the hard questions, and we take care of all of that on the back end. So you won't even have to worry about these little things. We're already going to have the answers for you, because the way that we run most of our business is that we purchase lots. So we are on this same hunt like buyers are. We're not a developer, so we don't go out and buy like 500 acres of land, at least at this point.
And then cram them all in there like sardines. We don't do that.
No.
We are not that builder.
Thank goodness.
Yes.
The community we're sitting in now, actually, the lots range from 2 to 7 acres that we purchased here. And so they're all gorgeous lots with oak trees. And this is in a gated community, actually.
Yeah.
Super small community. But the area we're in now is a perfect example of just getting into the hill country and the different kinds of communities you can find here. This one is a one road community with a cul-de-sac at the end. Everything's on acreage. All the homes are pretty new. It does have an HOA. That's something we haven't hit on a lot yet, but in the hill country, some of these acreage lots will be in HOAs still, even if they're on acreage.
Yes.
Now, normally the acreage ones are not going to be as strict as I think buyers from out of state. I've observed this through my own business when I was practicing real estate independently as well, that but some buyers from out of state have a perception of HOAs that it's like, you should absolutely never buy in an
Right.
HOA. It is going to be hell.
Yeah, they're going to be out measuring your grass with a ruler, and it's not like that out here.
We do have some, but those are usually going to be in either big box communities, which
Right.
we aren't. I don't work in those. I'm sure Kourtni will help buyers buy in them if
I
they
do,
want
yes.
to. But that's another story.
Yeah. Most of the HOAs out here, just from my observations, they don't want, pig farms. They don't want junkyards. They don't want, broke down vehicles in the driveway. Some of them don't want you to have, like, having your home office is fine, but you couldn't have, like, if you own like a construction company, they don't want like your whole business set up in the back where you've got big trucks and stuff coming in all the time. So it's normal things just to keep the peace but it's never anything that is, your grass cannot be over 2.5 inches, or we're going to send you a certified letter. And if trash can isn't off the road in 30 seconds after the trash guy picks it up, we're going to send you a fine. It's usually not like that out here.
Yeah.
More when you get into Leander Cedar Park, you're getting into like Crystal Falls and into Carriage Hills and, all those bigger subdivisions there. That's usually when you get into the pretty crazy strict stuff. But out here, everybody's pretty lenient. The rules are really just in place to keep the peace and keep it pretty and clean and not a mess.
Yeah,
So,
and they offer different things. Like, some of them, the POA that I live in is Lago Vista POA, and that's the one that's on Lake Travis on the north side. And it is the first POA I've ever lived in that I actually genuinely feel like I don't even pay, what I'd be willing to pay to
Right.
get access to all the amenities that we have. It's just over $200 a year, and we have 9 private lakefront parks. We have fitness centers, clubhouses, a private pool, all these different things. And then, the HOAs out here further into the country, they might not have all of those built out amenities, but they might have gated access and
cluster mailboxes, they keep the road maintained.
yes.
So usually that's what what you're paying for when you come and hit these HOAs out here. Like I know Draper, it's $250 a year. Where we're at now, it's $250 a year. They just put a gate up because before we started building here, there were 4 homes in this neighborhood. We're building 8. We've got 6 right now. There's 2 more. We have 2 bigger lots that we're going to go ahead and start building on. Just FYI, I didn't know if you know that.
I didn't.
Yep. We're going to start building on these big lots in the
That's
cul-de-sac.
exciting.
So we'll have 2 more. So we're going to have 8 houses in here. But since we started building in here, the HOA said, hey, we're getting more people coming in. Let's make it a little more secure for the families that are moving in. So they put a gate up, which I think is awesome because that just gives everybody a little added security. Not like there's crazy people running around out here in the middle of nowhere in Bertram, but it's nice to have the security. I mean, I don't have much to say. I live in town in Bertram, and I have a gate and a fence around my house, and I love it.
Yeah.
Keeps the solar guys away.
Oh, don't get me started on the solar guys.
I was outside the other day. I left my house to go pick up my kid from school, and there were 3 solar guys on freaking motorized scooters flying down my street.
Listen, I got torn apart one time on the community board. I feel it's been enough years that it's safe for me to retell the story. At least a brief. I'm like blushing thinking about it, honestly. It was so horrifying. But there was this solar guy that was like harassing everyone. And I was sticking up for the homeowner, and I just said something about that it's a really tacky and disrespectful sales tactic, in my opinion. Like, when you're door knocking and someone is saying, I'm not available, and you're continuing to knock on the door. Come on, dude.
Yeah, just take the hint, go on. You're going to be in another neighborhood tomorrow. Like, try again. Not every day is a win.
And maybe this is Texas of us, but like, no, don't knock on my door if you don't know me. Honestly, I really don't. I don't like that.
A lot of people, and a lot of people are like that. And that's another good thing with these gated, when they put gates on these neighborhoods. Like, I know I'm a country bumpkin. I grew up in the middle of nowhere outside Atlanta. Like, I
love when you call yourself a country bumpkin.
I'm a country girl. And so when I hear gated neighborhood, I'm thinking, hoity-toity, not me. But really, we're not those kind of gated neighborhoods out here. Let me just say that. It is to keep unwanted people out, keep solicitors out, and just give you the extra sense of security. Like at night, knowing, hey, the gate's shut on our neighborhood tonight. No randoms are going to be coming up and down our street at night. Just gives you an extra sense of security. It's not... no hoity-toityness out here.
Exactly. Something I did also want to, I heard you say at the beginning when we were talking about HOAs was animals.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, this one could not be more important because so many clients, home buyers will want to bring some kind of farm animal.
Chickens are a big
or
one.
Livestock. Yes, chickens. So there are these HOAs we're talking about and cities. Will sometimes have restrictions on the types of animals you can have. And you might think you can have anything because you've driven out here 100 times and you're like, I swear I've seen almost everything. And that one animal you want to have is on the ban list. And sometimes it's random. Sometimes it'll just be chickens or it'll just be pigs. Sometimes it'll just be donkeys.
Yeah.
You know? Or it'll be a list of a few animals that are restricted. So it is highly important if you plan to get a certain animal or if you already have them and you're wanting to move them to your new land, make sure that you check not only your HOA restrictions, but even the city. I would go even as far as to say that I've encountered a situation where a client bought a lot thinking that it was outside of city limits, but because it was in the is it the interterrestrial?
Yes, I know what you're trying to say.
Extraterrestrial or
There's
It's
a
like
certain jurisdiction, yes. And now that you've said that, I can't think of what it is.
I'm pretty sure
There's
it's
a jurisdiction.
Intraterrestrial.
I believe that is correct.
Jurisdiction. But whatever it is.
The ETJ.
Yes, so it's not intra then, but it's in the ETJ. Thank you. Why
I
couldn't I get the...
And now she's got my brain just turning, and I can't spit out what it really is. But the abbreviation is ETJ.
Now that I said extraterrestrial, it's too late.
The aliens must approve.
But anyway, if you buy it, the point is that my client had purchased in an ETJ, and he was under the impression when he purchased the land that they could bring the chickens because it wasn't in city limits. Well,
Wrong.
wrong.
Well, it depends on the city. I know, like in Bertram, if you're within the city limits, you can have chickens, but you can't have a rooster. You can have hens, but you can't have a rooster. And I didn't know that until after I bought chickens. I didn't want a rooster because I was already a little scared of chickens when I bought mine. But I just had this picture in my head of me walking through my yard and a rooster just like flogging me. So I didn't want a rooster anyways. I was going to get rid of it if I had accidentally got one. Because they say that, oh, yeah, these are all females, but they never know. But yeah, like certain city limits, you can have chickens, but they can only be hens. They can't be roosters.
Yeah, Lago is one of them. We can have hens, but not roosters.
And I think that's too is because the roosters make so
They're
much
loud.
noise. Yeah.
I think in Lago, it's just because of the noise.
Yeah, I think that's Bertram too. But like we can have, like my neighbor has a massive potbelly pig. Like you can have a pig, but you couldn't have like a farm of pigs.
Yes, some of them are even like that. It's like, oh, you can have a pet pig. You just
Yes.
can't like be breeding pigs or selling pigs or like making pork.
Yes. I know, right?
I don't like talking about that.
Yeah, we have I remember a couple years ago we were out riding around our neighborhood and our neighbors had just got this pig and he was so cute. He was so tiny. His name's Mr. Pickles. I'm obsessed with him. And then the other day I was driving through the neighborhood again and I saw Mr. Pickles and he is like the size of a bathtub.
Yeah,
He's huge. And I text my neighbor and I'm like, what happened to our cute Mr. Pickles? And she was like, don't even get me started. He's actually massive. But the city hasn't bugged her on it. So, and I haven't seen where there's a restriction against having, a singular pig or maybe two. But it's when you get into a pig farm. And I think with that is because of the smell with the pig farms and stuff. You have to be really kind of far out of town if you want to have like a whole pig farm.
Have a lot of acreage. You're going to want that for your own olfactory senses as well.
Yeah. And speaking of, I don't know why this just made this come into my mind. One thing we haven't talked about is like ag exemptions and wildlife exemptions.
Oh my gosh, yes, I'm so glad you brought that up.
When you buy property in Texas, you can... It's certain acreage. Normally it's about 10 acres plus is when you can get your ag exemption. So an agricultural exemption is when you have animals on the property. And most of these big plots of land or, larger than 10 acres, normally a lot of them are already ag exempt and they've been ag exempt for as long as, the beginning of time. Yes, since the dawn of time, they've been ag exempt. And used to back in the day, you could buy a piece of land, say it wasn't ag exempt. You could go to the county, say, hey, I'm throwing some cows on here. They'll issue your ag exemption. When you have an ag exemption, it cuts your property taxes on your land down to like next to nothing. It is very
$dollars a year sometimes.
Very, very low. And so a lot of people, that is a very big plus when buying land is having that ag exemption.
Critical. It's like it's thousands and thousands of dollars a year. Usually.
So like I said, most of them are. And back in the day, you could just go in. Hey, I'm buying cows. Okay, here's your ag exemption. These days, and a lot of people don't know this, especially people that are new to buying like bigger tracts of land. You can't just go to the county these days and say, hey, I bought a property that's not ag exempt. I want an ag exemption. They don't just give it to you these days. Now you have to get whatever your ag thing is, whether it be cows, goats, horses, what have you. Bees is another one. You can have beehives and that will qualify you for an ag exemption. But you have to show your proof when you bought the animals and you brought them on the property, proof of feed bills, vet bills for 5 years. And then you take all of that for 5 years to the county, and then the county can issue your ag exemption. So a lot of people don't know that these days, but FYI, another exemption is wildlife exemptions. That also gives you a pretty good tax break on your properties. So with a wildlife exemption, you don't have to have animals on your property, but rather you are what's the word?
Allowing them to graze as their native habitat.
Yes. So you're basically perfecting the natural wildlife's habitats. So, clearing
That's
some.
a perfect way of putting it. Perfecting.
Yes.
natural
So
wildlife's
you're
habitat.
clearing some underbrush for deer to have a place to sleep at night. You're putting out protein feed for the deer. So, they're growing big and full for, hunting season. Shooting wild hogs. That's another thing. You show proof that you took out X amount of wild hogs because they come through.
I had no clue.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can do that because, wild hogs go through and they just ravage land. They root it all up and
They're awful. I almost got attacked by one when I was 8 years old. I had to run up
PTSD moment.
The tree was shaking. Me and my best friend were holding on.
They're crazy. I don't like them. They make me so nervous.
Yeah, her brothers and her dad and grandpa came around on four-wheelers. We were in Buffalo, Texas, which is not in the hill country region. It's in the lakes and prairie. Sorry to divert. I have to talk about my wild hog
No, we're here for
attack.
this.
And so anyway, we were up at the tree. All I remember is we were screaming, crying, holding onto the branches for dear
no.
life. One hog was basically shaking the tree, running into it. A second hog came, and then everybody came around on the four-wheelers. It was the most country you've ever seen.
I love it.
Running into them to
Yeah,
scare
get
them
'em.
away, and they left.
Yeah.
I can't remember if they shot him or not. They tried to keep that stuff away from us.
Yeah.
We were like,
Well,
We're not into
hogs
that.
hogs are nuts, and so eradicating wild hogs that helps you. There's quite a few things. So you've got a couple options for wildlife exemption or ag exemption, which also gives you a big tax break. So another thing to know while buying dirt.
100%.
Yeah,
What else do you think we haven't hit yet?
I don't know. We've covered a lot.
You want to know something funny?
I do always.
I noticed that I say 100% 90 times.
That's
We
okay.
do the podcast and it makes me laugh. I don't know why I'm saying it so much.
Now everybody that's listening is going to be like, "Oh, she said it. Take a drink
Yeah.
every time Steph says
Yeah,
100%."
We can make it a drinking game.
That's so funny.
We'll do that next week. Maybe
Yeah.
it'll make me not say it as much.
Maybe.
Yeah. Trying
Well,
to keep y'all sober.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Love it. Love it. Well, I think we've covered a big chunk of the dirt on buying dirt, things that you need to know. Of course, we're always available if you think of questions. We're always here. And as usual, this podcast is sponsored by LTX Home Builders. So if you're looking for a home in the Texas Hill Country, we should be your go-to for that.
Yep. And you know what they say. Bye. Dang, I didn't hit that. I thought that was going to turn out really good. We're still going to leave it, though.
We're going to leave it.
That's the end.
That's the end.
Bye.
Bye.